John Summit's advice to producers: do not be afraid of rejection. The 30-year-old producer emphasizes the importance of putting yourself out there in a new interview with Music Tech. John Summit, one of EDM's biggest rising stars, has offered a piece of advice for aspiring producers: do not be afraid of rejection, even if it does land some haters along the way. Yeah, and I'll say this, like, if you're a producer and you're making music and you're sending your music out there, don't get so butthurt that people are like, yeah, this isn't for us, right? This should be like the thing that fuels your fire. And just like, you know what? If they don't like it, maybe the next person will. If they don't like it, maybe the next person will. Most of the music that I finish, I'll send out to 10 plus labels, and 2 of them maybe respond with a no. If you want to submit a demo to a record label, you could go onto their website, onto their SoundCloud, maybe even their YouTube. You'll see a demo email. He sent a track a week to Defected until they finally liked one, which was Deep End. Banger. It like changed the whole landscape of tech house, I feel like. But yeah, a track a week. I'm not even finishing a track a week right now. But if you really want to release on Monster Cat, you really want to release on Defected, you want to release on, Deadbeats or Wakan or whatever, just spam them. You just keep sending them stuff eventually, and be monitoring the stuff that they put out, right? Don't just don't send Wakan a tech house track. But I mean, hey, he sent a track a week for over a year. 50 plus tracks, right? That's insane. That's an insane amount of music, but when you're committed to something, you really got to just continue to chip away, right? I never got a Circus Records release until this new project, the WHOiSEE project. I got several other like smaller label releases under the Mad Hatter project, which were good. They did well. I did some pretty good numbers. I got a Subsidia release, right? But it wasn't like a Subsidia EP, right? There's a difference between getting a Subsidia like on a compilation, especially when you're competing with much bigger artists on a compilation. Not that it's a bad thing. It's like you can check that box off, like, oh, got a Subsidia release, right? But to get featured from a record label is like a completely different, for them to invest into you is a different thing. Right. And that's ultimately the goal. But getting your foot in the door with an official remix, a compilation, that's how you start those conversations. Right. And I'm so grateful and fortunate to have Circus Records investing into this project and believing in me, and so I think what John Summit is saying here is like 100% correct, where it's like, don't worry about saying no. Every single song I've ever sent to Monster Cat, they said no. But I'm still going to send them music that I think aligns with their catalog. It's not like they're never going to sign me. It's just like, for whatever reason, they weren't vibing with it at that point. That's nothing personal to you. And I would hope no record label comes back and like, oh, you suck. It's very unlikely. But the idea is you keep putting yourself in front of these labels, right? You keep putting yourself in a situation where they can give you feedback, right? And I think things like Label Radar are really good because sometimes they will like it, but it's not necessarily what the vision of their catalog is going for, and that's a lot of the times my case, where it's like, man, this is really good, but it's just not quite what we want to sign at the moment. And so, it just tells me I'm on the right track, right? But ultimately, 95% of my submissions that I send out don't get a response, or it's a hard no. And it's just part of it. I used to, and I'll be honest, like when you get no after no after no after no after no, it's like, dude, what am I doing? What do we have to change, right? But it's very momentary for me, and I just take my own advice, and I'm like, all right, this is what I need to be doing, right? And so he says, having sent countless demos to labels in the early years in hopes of getting his music picked up by one, Summit is no stranger to rejection. Do not be afraid of rejection. Everybody sees how I just tweet at the people I collaborate with. You don't lose anything by putting yourself out there. Exactly right. You, the classic, like, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and also it's like you'll start to develop a little bit of rapport, especially if it's like You're sending, like Chris Ramos is saying, oh, he sent a track every week for a year. Well, maybe the first 20 tracks, they're like, dude, this dude will not stop, right? But maybe by track 25, 30, they're like, they're seeing a progression, right? Maybe he's getting better. The tracks are getting higher quality. And you start to kind of build this relationship, and maybe an unspoken relationship, but eventually, right, you're going to make something that where their mind is and where your track is are in the same place. Ultimately, you should be making music that you're very excited about, first and foremost. I think that will be reflected in the music itself and how it's put together. So he says here, and no one really gives an F, he adds, people get too in their heads about this stuff too. You don't lose anything from putting yourself out there, and it does come with some hate and stuff, but if you don't give a shit, then anything is possible. As a musician, Summit says he also is a huge believer in collaboration, even if it's having someone to bounce ideas off of. Every single song I've ever put out, I bounced off my manager asking, what's your thoughts on this? I'll show my mom a track and see what she thinks about getting new perspectives. Yeah, and that's a big thing. And as a producer, you should be thinking of all of the viewpoints of your track, not just what is my producer friends going to think about it, but what's the marketing managing people going to think about this? What are the people outside of the industry, right? Outside of the EDM culture going to think about this? Like, I'll use my family every so often where I'm just like, hey, what do you think about this? You know, a lot of my music is like beep boop yink yonk stuff, so I can kind of guess what they're gonna say. But every now and then, you know, my parents will be like, oh, I really like that one that you did, and I'm like, okay, I got some normal feedback from people outside the scene. It's when I first started showing my family music, it was like, what are you doing? Go back to playing guitar and saxophone. This is crazy. Right. But over time, as the music industry has progressed and they've been exposed more to it, probably outside of just me doing it, it starts to kind of normalize itself a bit. But yeah, that's a big thing, is like find as many people to bounce your music off of as possible. I think it's super important. Not just people in the industry, people outside the industry especially. He says elsewhere in the chat, Summit says he frequently listens to demos from young producers in his label and how their experience often leads to the creation of great ideas. On my label, Experts Only, I listen to demos from young producers all the time. They're not technically great. You can tell that they don't really know what a proper mixdown is, but when you don't have any rules to follow, you can create great ideas. And yeah, who knows? You know, you may send a track to John Summit, and sure, it's not mixed perfectly and like all these things, but John Summit may be like, let's work on this. You don't know. This guy seems in a very collaborative headspace these days, doing stuff with like Subfocus and Subtronics and stuff. So yeah, no, pretty crazy. I think his main thing of don't be afraid of rejection, it should just be a blanket statement where it's just like, feel good about what you're doing. People will come to that. They attach themselves to growth, right? They want to see your growth. And I think that's what really catches people's attention more than it does like you just producing the best track out of nowhere from nothing.